Hi folks, I got some exciting news to report to you guys today. I just discovered over on Perfumo.com that Van Cleef & Arpels is relaunching 4 of their classic fragrances. So those 4 classic fragrances happen to be Van Cleef, Gem, Tsar, and Pour Homme. The only one I have in its original form is Pour Homme, as you can see right here. But I've reported on several times in the channel that if you were ever visiting France, Paris, and you went to the Van Cleef & Arpels boutique, which is basically a jewelry house, near the Place Vendôme, they have a boutique that's been there for years. And right next to it, there is actually a perfume boutique selling a lot of their collection extraordinaire fragrances. But within the last couple of years, they relaunched 3 of the Les Classiques or classic fragrances, and I've reported on them and told you guys about them. If you were in the market to get them and you are going there or you know someone going there, get them if you are a fan of it. So first off, Pour Homme is in a bottle like this. That's currently, but what I'm going to report on is they're relaunching the fragrances. So I'll flash some photos on for you to see. In that same collection, similar to the La Collection Extraordinaire fragrances bottles, there's Tsar. Tsar is a long-standing men's fragrance from the late 80s. I actually kind of preferred the Pour Homme a little more than Tsar, but I wore Tsar in the early 90s. It came in a green bottle. And then finally, they also had Van Cleef. So now they are relaunching these 3 fragrances in new bottles, kind of taking on the color of the OG bottles. Of course, the Tsar is in a green bottle, but here they put it in a black bottle. And then, of course, Pour Homme comes in a black bottle, but the shape of the bottles are different. Then we also have Van Cleef. And the only one I don't know much about is Gem. Gem is an older fragrance that I've never gotten my nose on. And until I bought Van Cleef in the Collection Extraordinaire bottles, but in a collection called Les Classiques, I hadn't smelled Van Cleef either. So let me break down the different fragrances for you guys. But before I do that, I also want to say, up until the announcement of these 4 fragrances, the only signature line fragrance that Van Cleef & Arpels had has been First. Everything else had been discontinued. You know, they had Midnight in Paris. They had a lot of different fragrances that have gotten discontinued. And the only one that was remaining is the fragrance called First fragrance created by Jean-Claude Ellena, which I actually had autographed by him here on the back, which is kind of cool. But now they're relaunching these 4 fragrances. Will Midnight in Paris get a relaunch as well? I don't know. We shall see, but they are launching these 4 fragrances. But what's First all about? It's an aldehydic fragrance and it was launched in the late 70s. I think around 76. I could be wrong, somewhere around there though. But certainly very feminine, powdery, aldehydic, and of course spicy kind of a fragrance. It smells like any of those very famous vintage fragrances that you might be familiar with, but very powdery with an aldehydic edge and things like that. So this is certainly a real awesome classic created by Jean-Claude Ellena, and definitely worth in your collection if you like those classic fragrances. Sure, it might come off old school, but definitely something historic from the house, and it's their first fragrance, and obviously it's called First. But a few of the more popular, or I should say more my favorite Collection Extraordinaire fragrances I want to go over real quickly with you guys, and we'll get to the actual fragrances. But Orchid Leather is an awesome fragrance created by Julien Rascanet. It's a kind of a warm and fruity take on leather. Super awesome. I love this fragrance. Definitely one of my favorite creations from Julien Rascanet. I love the plum, which provides a bit of boozy fruitiness. Really awesome. And then we also have Sonia Constant's Moonlight Patchouli. Really great take on earthy patchouli with rose. It's dark and gothic, and of course, Chypre-like. So super awesome. If you don't know that one and you like the dark gothic rose and patchouli together, check that out. Then we have Quentin Biche's Neroli Amara. So this to me is kind of like his very famous DNA. Like, to me, it reminds me of a Neroli take on Fleur Narcotique. If you enjoy that and you also like Neroli, this is definitely one for you to try because I get the similarities in there. And then last but not least, one of the latest ones from the house in the Collection Extraordinaire is MUSC de Soie. I can't remember who did this fragrance, unfortunately. This is very powdery. If you like the idea of baby powder, you're for sure going to like this. It's so super powdery. It smells of like baby powder with, other ingredients in there. It's somewhat classic. It's somewhat soapy. And, of course, very, very powdery. There might be like floral touches in here. I almost pick up a very faint rose, but I'm picking up some white floral notes as well. So that's the latest in the La Collection Extraordinaire. Or I should say it's just Collection Extraordinaire. But, up until then, the only one that's existing since everything else got discontinued has been first. And now we've got 4 fragrances. So the first fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is Van Cleef, which did come in this bottle. And when I sampled this one, I thought, even though it's a feminine targeted release, it's not super feminine smelling. It's for sure ambery. And Van Cleef and Arpels had never submitted these fragrances to the databases. So I was reliant on the notes from the previous editions. But the new versions in the new bottle mention that there's neroli, raspberry for top notes, there's jasmine and rose for heart notes, and base notes, musk, tonka beans, and vanilla. So this is what it says. For me, I get very warm, ambery, but also floral and fruity. But the fruitiness is not so prominent. It's there, but it's not about the fruits. It just nicely accentuates the neroli up top, which you have this, floral start with fruits, and then you also have a floral heart. So I feel like it's a nice segue from the neroli to the jasmine. But it does get warm and musky in the dry down, and along the way you get spiciness. I think it's a solid release from the house. I don't know if the formula will change from this edition of Van Cleef until the new edition that just announced. And it's interesting that Van Cleef is relaunching these fragrances. Is it because there's been demand for these fragrances? Because I've mentioned these fragrances here and there many times. I bought these in 2022 and really am happy that they have launched these, but also happy that they're relaunching them now as more of a mass market release rather than something you have to go to the boutique in Paris to pick up. But let me know if you're a fan of Van Cleef. Add a comment below. Let's talk about Gem, which I don't have any way to explain the fragrance to you guys because I've never smelled it and I don't own an edition that has the Les Classiques on it, as you can see right there. But the notes break down for Gem: mandarin orange, peach, and plums for top notes. Heart notes, tuberose and ylang-ylang. Base notes, cedarwood, patchouli, vanilla. Again, I have nothing to go off of here. I did notice that this is a very classic fragrance. I'm excited to get my nose on it. Eventually what I'm going to do is just buy all 4 of these and report to you guys. And hopefully in the future, they'll launch a few other popular Van Cleef & Arpels fragrances. They'll relaunch them, is what I'm trying to say. But Gem, what do you think about Gem? How does it sound to you guys? Let me know. Do add a comment below. And if you've gotten your nose on the OG version of Gem, do let us know about what it smells like. Because again, I've never got my nose on Gem, and I'm quite curious how it's going to be. And also very curious about how these are going to be. So most likely in the new bottles called Les Classiques. So the new bottles that they just announced, and these bottles are considered Les Classiques, as you can see right there. But again, they're changing the bottles. They're removing it from the Collection Extraordinaire bottles, which is what it says right there, as you can see. And now they're going to be more in mass market looking bottles, which is kind of cool. And I guess there was a demand from people for these fragrances, and Van Cleef & Arpels has decided to relaunch them, which is kind of cool. We do like classic fragrances, and of course we like modern fragrances as well. Let's talk a little bit about Tsar. So I never wore Tsar in the late 80s. Tsar was launched in the late 80s, I believe around 88 or 87, or maybe it was 89, I don't know. But I wore Tsar. Was it around 91 or 92 is when I wore it. It was gifted to me by a relative, uncle, and I enjoyed it. But by the time I wore it, I went through it, and I wasn't wearing fragrance as much as I used to. I wear a lot more fragrance now, but then again, also I had less options back then. So I had a few fragrances and I would pull for it. But I think I got bored of Tsar for some strange reason. And the landscape of fragrance was changing, shifting. So I felt like Tsar might be a bit too old school. And at that time, there were a bit more modern smelling fragrances launching. But I do appreciate Tsar. And I don't have a vintage bottle of it. I have this version only, as you can see. But yeah, it brings back memories for sure. But it has notes of mugwort and rosemary for top notes. Heart features geranium and jasmine. Base features amber and woody notes. But for sure, it's a classic. I mean, it's been around for a while. And I think there was a huge following for it. I'm uncertain when it got discontinued. But if you have a vintage bottle of it, savor it. If I can find a vintage bottle of it, I will savor it as well. Because the bottle is iconic. It certainly looks like this, but it's more green, obviously. It's like a dark green, but not so dark that it's more like olive. It's got some, green brightness, but it's a nice bottle and totally iconic, as I said. And the bottle for the new version is taking on the color of the old bottle, which is kind of cool because when it comes in these bottles that are for the Collection Extraordinaire, they kind of do not fit to me. But I also felt like when they did this, they kind of made them a bit exclusive. Like you have to go to the boutique to get them. And of course, there's not a lot of boutiques. At least I don't shop for Van Cleef & Arpels products except for their fragrances. So I don't seek out their boutiques. I don't know if we have one here. Probably do. But from what I remember being told, these Les Classiques were only available in the Paris boutique. And now we're going to get them a worldwide release with them. So let me know if you're a fan of Tsar. Add a comment below. And the last fragrance I want to talk to you about is Pour Homme, my favorite in the classics. I love this fragrance, and thankfully I do have this vintage sort of bottle. It's not the oldest bottle. I think this is more of a bottle from, I think, the latter part of the 2000s. Not the 2010s, but the 2000s. But it got discontinued towards the end of the 2010s, I believe. And it could have been around that time is when Tsar got discontinued as well. But for some reason, I kind of had gotten bored of Tsar. I never sought it out. I never found looked for another bottle, even though I was collecting vintage bottles back then. But what I like about Pour Homme, let me tell you what the notes break down. It's lavender and sage for top notes. Heart features iris and patchouli and vetiver. Base notes leather, musk. It's an awesome fragrance. From what I remember in the OG, though, the OG had like pine. There is a pininess and a lot of rose, but I'm not seeing the rose come up. But also, I think lately, what the brands do with the launch of fragrances, that they're not putting down every single note in it. But to me, Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme does remind me of some of the greener, chypre-like fragrances of the 70s. This Pour Homme came out around the same time as Polo Green came out by Ralph Lauren. So there are some similarities to it. But I feel like the reformulation of Ralph Lauren's Polo up top is so good, and the heart, it's so good. It's when it gets to the leather stage of the reformulation that I kind of do not like. It's just a really synthetic smelling leather. But this is so invigorating here. Like, it's so fresh, like the herbs and aromatics and spices and woods. So green and fresh. Another fragrance I should bring up that also launched around this era is Yatagan from the House of Caron. So it's an awesome scent. This is definitely a favorite of mine, Pour Homme from Van Cleef. And again, here we have the Les Classiques version that was exclusive to the boutique. And now we have the new editions coming out. So I don't know when these are launching, but most likely very soon. I'm excited for them. I hope that they are going to be very similar to the versions I have. And then, of course, I'll be smelling Gem for the first time. But let me know your thoughts on these re-release of Van Cleef & Arpels Les Classiques Collection fragrances. Are you excited for them? Are you a fan of the originals? Are you looking forward to the new ones? Most likely people are going to complain about the reformulations. They're not going to smell identical. I have a video on the channel of these Les Classiques fragrances. I do compare it here with the OG that I have. And there is a subtle difference there. I felt like the OG Pour Homme is a bit louder, but the Pour Homme in the Les Classiques bottle that is the same bottles as Collection Extraordinaire seems a bit more subdued. So there are those differences, but other than that, it smelled fairly similar to me. But hopefully the new versions will smell close to the OG as well. And if you have any info on these fragrances also, do add a comment and let us know about it. But for me, I wanted to get this video out to you guys so you can find out about this, because I just heard about it on Parfumo.com, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I have spoken about the Les Classiques fragrances from Van Cleef & Arpels. But let me know your thoughts on these fragrances, and also add a comment below and let us know if there's another Van Cleef & Arpels fragrance that's been discontinued that you'd like to see in this collection as well. Let's find out. Because I know the only other one I really know is Midnight in Paris, which could be cool to receive as well. But they're launching with these four for now, and we'll see what happens in the future. But thanks so much for watching the second video for the day, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button and also the bell icon so you'll be notified for the next video. Sorry, there's some commotion behind the scenes. And also, please give a thumbs up to this video to help with the algorithm. See you guys later. Bye-bye.